It is now my personal privilege to introduce our commencement speaker, Mr. Mike Peters. Mike Peters was born right here in St. Louis and grew up in a house in the Dogtown neighborhood near Washington University's campus. His mother was Charlotte Peters, a noted television personality in St. Louis during the 1950s and 60s. Mrs. Peters encouraged her son's interest in drawing, and from an early age, Mike recalls having an interest in cartooning. Mike graduated from Christian Brothers College High School and enrolled here at Washington University. During his time as an undergraduate, he was a member of Sigma Chi fraternity, he was involved in ROTC, and he was a cartoonist with Student Life. Mike graduated from the university in 1965 with a Bachelor of Fine Arts degree. Something very significant happened to Mike Peters while he was serving as a cartoonist for Student Life. He met his wife, Marion, who was then a social editor for the paper. Marion, Mike's wife of 47 years, who is with us today, is also a 1965 graduate. Marion's father was Paul Knoll, a former assistant dean at Washington University, and her mother was Marguerite Knoll, who at one time was responsible for the many receptions at Washington University that occur right after commencement, a tradition that continues today. Mike Peters and his family indeed have deep connections to our university. Following his graduation, Mike worked briefly on the art staff of the Chicago Daily News before being drafted in 1966 into the U.S. Army. In the Army, Mike met his mentor, Bill Moulton, the renowned World War II artist who helped Mike secure his first cartooning position with the Dayton Daily News in 1969. After 3 short years of drawing cartoons for the Dayton Daily News, Mike's editorial cartoons became syndicated nationally. In 1981, he was awarded a Pulitzer Prize for journalism. Today, his editorial cartoons appear in more than 400 newspapers and publications worldwide, including Newsweek, Time, and U.S. News and World Report. In 1984, Mike Peters created the world-famous Mother Goose and Grimm comic strip that appears in more than 800 newspapers worldwide and is consistently placed in the top 10 most popular comic strip ratings. Mike was gracious enough to provide all of our graduates this morning with a memento of today's celebration, a congratulatory message from Grimmy. Mike has been well recognized for his accomplishments as a journalist. He is the 2010 recipient of the Overseas Press Club's Thomas Nast Award for Best Editorial Cartooning on International Affairs. He's won 3 Overseas Press Club citations, 6 National Headliner Awards for Editorial Cartooning, and the National Cartoonist Society's Rubin Award for Outstanding Cartoonist of the Year in 1992. Mike was inducted into the St. Louis Media Hall of Fame in 2007, and he has a star on Delmar Boulevard, the St. Louis Walk of Fame on the Loop. Mike and his wife, Marion, have homes in Orlando, Florida, and Snowmass, Colorado. They have 3 daughters, one of whom is here today, a son, and 7 grandchildren. Mike Peters is certainly one of our university's most distinguished graduates. To the class of 2012, Mike represents the promise of opportunity that exists today for each and every one of you, that if you work hard and follow your dreams, you will be well rewarded. Graduates, families, and distinguished guests, I'm honored to introduce you to Mike Peters.
Chancellor and Board of Trustees, thank you so much. I hope you don't go, oh God, why did I invite this guy? My fraternity brothers reminded me, or not remind, let me know that that my first degree here at Washington University was an honorary degree. So thank you for the second honorary degree that I had here. I'm honored to have my wife and my daughter, who surprised me last night. My wife is the one who should be making the speech. And my sister is back there, and my niece, and my best friends from from Sigma Chi, and my best friends from CBC are here, so thank you so much. And my mother, I hope, is here looking down on me. As the Chancellor said, she had a TV show called The Charlotte Peters Show. It was 5 days a week, and she sang, she danced. It was like Oprah and I Love Lucy all in the same show. She would have movie stars on and politicians and stuff, and we, my sister, I can't see her here, but I think she'll agree with me that we were sort of famous. There she is. We were sort of famous being in the limelight of my mom because of her show. I mean, everybody knew of Pat and Mike when she had her show because she would always talk about us. Pat, here's a story that you've never heard, and I thought was kind of apropos. In my freshman year of high school, I would get phone calls from girls who I did not know, and they would ask me to go to their prom. And since I couldn't get a date anywhere else, I would say absolutely. And then I would go get a tuxedo and then wait for them to come to my door. And because I couldn't drive, and so the mother and father came and the girl, and I would introduce, her, to me, and then we would go get in this car. And while we were in this car, on the way to the prom, the mother would say, do you know Gladys is musical also? And I said, really? And then she would say yes. And she would say, would you like to hear Gladys play sometime? And I said, yeah. And then the mother brought a violin out and gave it to Gladys, and then Gladys would start playing all the way to the prom. And I didn't know what to do. I just sat and listened, and at the end, very good, what do you do? And then we went to the prom. The next girl was some, Monica or somebody. And I introduced myself. We get in the mother and father's car. The mother says, Monica is musical. And I would say, of course she is, And then Monica would take an oboe out from underneath the driver's seat and start playing it. And I would sit there and kind of really appreciate it. Now, this is kind of fun. And then we would go on to the prom. It wasn't until I was 30 years old that I realized they were auditioning for my mom's show. I didn't realize that. I thought that any girl you took to a prom brought a musical instrument and would play for you, as a thank you for inviting me. And the first girl I invited out and to a prom, and she came out and she didn't have a musical instrument. I thought she was dissing me. I thought, what a put down, But as you can see, I lived, as the Chancellor said, I grew up about 2 miles from here in a place called Dogtown. I was a weird little kid. I was cross-eyed, so one of my eyes was always looking at my other eye. It was lazy eye, and so one eye was always like that. And any picture I had always had me smiling, but it was sad, this cross-eyed kid. And I was very skinny. I had a concave chest. And once it was so concave, Marion doesn't know this, I did eat my cereal out of the concave when I was watching TV one time, but I never told you about it. But the worst thing was I had this horrible stutter. It wasn't just a stammer. It wasn't a like that. It was like this. And my mom would introduce me to 100 people because she had this TV show, and she would say, hi, this is my son Mike. He's the future president of the United States. Say hello, Mike. And I'd look up cross-eyed, and I'd go, and people would go, oh, Jesus, and then kind of turn away. They were embarrassed. So then I started drawing because I thought if I drew, I wouldn't have to open my mouth. I could just do a drawing, and I'd give it to a girl, and she'd say, "Thank you." And then she would say, "What's your name?" I'd go, and she would go, "Oh, Jesus," like that. And so I learned to kind of keep my mouth shut and to draw. And I never really talked very much, and I never went outside all that much. This is when I'm like 10 years old. Until this one day, Pat, my sister, we walked back from St. James at midnight mass back to our house. And our parents had put out all the Christmas gifts. And my mom gave me this gift, and I opened it up. And she had made me a real live Superman suit. Now, this is at a time that no kid had a Superman suit. They weren't doing that then. And I looked down, and I was like, I can't believe this. I'm looking like that guy in Raiders of the Lost Ark, when he opens up the Ark of the Covenant, and the light shines, and the eyes like this. Well, that was the way I was, except that guy was a Nazi, and so his face melted off. But I was like, I couldn't believe this, and so I took it upstairs and I put on this costume, and I felt like I could do anything. I felt like I was faster than a speeding bullet. I was more powerful than a locomotive. I could leap tall buildings in a single bound. I truly felt enabled. It was a good thing, and so I wore it everywhere. I wore it at the church. I wore it to St. James once, and then the nuns sent me home. But usually during the summer, I would sit in my room just kind of drawing because I wouldn't have to talk. And then if I saw anybody outside doing something bad, like somebody throwing trash out the window of their car, I would go to my closet and put on my Superman suit and then walk down to my steps and then fly over to the trash and land and then pick up the trash and then fly back to my house and then put it in my trash can and then take off my suit and put it back up. Well, this was at a time, I was 10, 11, and this was at a time when many boys, like my friend Bruce just told me, was making money by mowing the lawn and stuff like that, or by joining a baseball team or learning football. And I was still running around cleaning streets in my Superman suit. And my mom did not think I was growing up to be a normal kid. So she sent me to an all-boys military Catholic high school. An all-boys military Catholic high school. It was a Christian school for the criminally insane, It was this school. I mean, it's not military anymore. That's one of the best ones, but best boys schools. But they taught you. They had you carry M1s, rifles, and we were scapulas with a picture of Jesus on one side and then General George Patton on the other. So it was this weird school that taught you to love people and then kill them. And it was Our Lady of Armageddon. It was this strange school. I didn't know what to do there. All I knew was that I was an artist, and they didn't have any art school at that time at this school, and so my mom. I realized in the boys' room at the art school, and I didn't think about this until I was 40, and I thought, now that was odd. In the boys' room, guys always draw dirty pictures, in the stalls, and sometimes, and so I would do a picture of a naked lady, but then sign my name, Mike Peters, underneath it, because I wanted people to know that I was an artist and I should be viewed at that. My mom was trying to get me over stuttering, and so she said, the only way to get over stuttering is by getting in front of people. So she had me join the CBC cheerleading team, and so I would get on top of a 10-man pyramid because I was concave, the skinniest kid. And I would have a megaphone, and I'd say to 1,000 people, give me a sitta, C. And then 1,000 people would go, sitta, C. And it became the stuttering cheer of CBC. It was a fabulous thing. Well, so all I did mainly at that school was draw, and I was in with school paper and all this kind of stuff. And I was in this one class, Mr. Morgan's class, and this buddy of mine and we would sit there, and I'd draw an airplane and then pass it over to him, and then he would draw a tank blowing up the airplane, then he'd pass it over, and then I'd have a guy with a bazooka blowing up the tank. And so Mr. Morgan caught us and put us in the last row of his class, next to the windows, and he called that row his vegetable garden, okay? And he said, if you get nothing else out of this class, you'll get sunlight. And then maybe through the process of photosynthesis, you'll grow and flourish. Well, like 20 years later, I get asked to come back to that school. They want to give me an award and put me in their Hall of Fame, which is ironic because I was always in trouble, for doing these cartoons, and now I'm still, and now they want to give me an award for it. So I decide, Mr. Morgan was still there, and a few other teachers were still there, so I thought I'd go back to St. Louis and then look through my yearbook and then see how he looked, and I could draw him in front of him, and then he can't get mad because I'm an adult now and stuff. So I go back to St. Louis, and I start looking through my yearbook, which was fascinating, and I get to Mr. Morgan's picture, and obviously I had taken the yearbook and go like this to him, and so he signed it, and he said, "Dear Mr. Peters, you had better start growing up real soon, because remember, you can't always draw cartoons." Oh, no, that's great. Okay, so after that, I get into the art school at the Washington University. I meet the girl of my dreams, just a block down in front of the Sigma Chi house. I can't believe, how she, huge eyes, and I love her to death. And but I didn't know that her father was the dean of students at the time. And my grades now were not the best. I was spending a lot of my time in Bearskin and 13 Carnival and the yearbook and the newspaper and all this kind of stuff. And so he thought that I was going to be out of this school in my junior year. And so I get here. I was taking summer school every year. I'm sorry to say that. And so I get here, and on my the first day of my junior year, and I come into art school, and the dean of the art school, Dean McKay, called me into his office, and I hadn't done anything. He just called me in, and he said, "I see here that you've been taking summer school every year." I said, "Yeah, And he said, "We can't do that anymore. You've got to make actually good grades. You've got to actually make good grades here. You can't." And of course, her father, Marion's father, kept thinking that I was no threat. He had been picking out these guys all for the 2 years that I was dating his daughter. He was picking out engineers and lawyers and doctors really Protestant engineers and Protestant lawyers. And Protestant, doctors. And here she brings home, a stuttering, cross-eyed Catholic cartoonist. And this is not what he wanted. And so the dean says, you've got to actually pass with good grades. So I don't know what to do. So I go to my professor that I had the year before. His name was Mr. Burnell. And I told him what the dean said. Now, here I'm getting to my point, you guys. I'm getting finally to my point. I tell him what the dean says. And I said, "What should I do? How can I do this? What should I do?" And he gave it some thought. Of course, Mr. Burnell gave it thought if you asked him his name. You say, "What is your name?" And he would, Burnell, And so he's sitting there for about 2 minutes, long 2 minutes. And he says, you like drawing cartoons, don't you? I say, yeah. And he said, why don't you do cartoons in all your art classes? I said, what do you mean? He said, when you go to figure drawing class, exaggerate the figures, make them into cartoons. When you go to the design class, design cartoons. When you go to painting class, paint cartoons. And I said, won't they get mad? And he said, it's okay, you're flunking, Mike. It's all right. So I started doing that. I started doing cartoons in all my classes, and I got my report card that first semester, and they were all A's and B's. All A's and B's. Well, you should applaud if you knew me. And Marion's father tried to, they stopped him from jumping off the Eads Bridge. It was the worst thing in the world to him. And so here's the deal. Here's the deal. A bunch of you are going to be lawyers, or doctors, or engineers, or artists, or whatever. There's some of you, just a few maybe, or just maybe larger than that. When you leave here, you haven't the faintest idea what you're going to be doing. Okay? When you leave this campus, you don't know what you're going to be doing. You're going to be, you're going to be walking out there, looking in the newspaper or the Craigslist or whatever. My suggestion is, for those of you who don't know what you want to be, try to write down the things you love. They may be stupid things, but write down the things you love. I love watching movies. I love drinking beer. I love whatever, whatever. But write these things down. And then try to, for 6 months or 7 months, try to get a job in those things you love. It doesn't have to be beer and movies, but try to make it. Last night, all of the people who are going to be getting our honorary degrees, the thing that we all have together is we love what we do. We love what we do. One quick story and I'm done. There was a girl who came up to me and she said, in Dayton, Ohio, and she came up and she said, my friends tell me I have a funny voice, and I want to, and I'd like to do commercials or something. And I've gone around Dayton and I can't find anything. And I went to Los Angeles and tried to do funny voices, and I can't do anything. And what do you suggest? And I said, go back. Don't take no, just go back. So she went back. You guys, for the last 22 years, she's been Bart Simpson. She's been the voice of Bart. She makes $1 billion. She makes so much money, but she's also a Scientologist. But she makes so much money and she loves what she does. So Marion and I last week, we went to go see the Avengers. The Avengers. We love the Avengers. Loved it. And it hit me. It hit both of us that you guys are like the Avengers right now. You are our superheroes. There's no stopping how far you can go. You are more powerful right now than a locomotive. You can leap tall buildings in a single bound. You understand? You, the class of 2012, you are Superman.